Today's video does contain some disturbing subject matter, especially story number 3, and viewer discretion is advised. Also, if you have a story you would like to send my way, just go to astheravendreams.com and click the button to do so. And of course, thank you. When everything started with COVID, I lost my job for a while. And while unemployment did help a bit, and my wife was able to keep her job, we were spreading ourselves a bit thin financially. So, I needed to do something. I thought, hey, let's offer handyman services on Craigslist. I wasn't a handyman by trade, and I admit that I wasn't certified or anything, but I knew how to do most home repairs. Benefit of my dad being pushy with making me pay attention to him when he worked. He was a handyman. And when I was a kid out of school, I had to go with him to all of his jobs. All that is to say that I put a post up on Craigslist to advertise my abilities as a handyman. And I priced myself lower than anyone else, hoping that that would be enough to entice people to contact me. And entice it did. I got a notification on my phone the next day. An email from someone that had seen my ad, and they asked me if I could repaint a room. I've painted rooms before, successfully even, so I responded and told them that I would be happy to help them out with painting a room, if they needed. The deal went through quickly. They wanted me to come over the next day to start it, and asked if I could finish it within the week. After a bit of finessing on the price and how quickly we could get it done, he agreed to pay me half up front on PayPal, and when the payment came through, I excitedly said, "Alright, I'll see you tomorrow." I got to the house, and was a bit shocked to see the outside of it. It was not pleasant. The yard was overgrown, the shutters on the windows were literally hanging off, and the exterior paint was peeling. Part of me was a bit confused. Why would you worry about the color of your living room when the outside of your house is so uninviting? The other part of me was thinking, I bet I could talk him into letting me mow his lawn and fix those shutters too. I rang the doorbell, and a middle-aged man answered. He looked a bit tired, but other than that was pretty normal. He looked at me with half-opened eyes and a bit of a scowl, asking me what I wanted. I want to add here that I was wearing overalls, a hat, and carrying my painting equipment. It was pretty clear why I was there. "I'm here to paint your living room? I'm James from the Craigslist ad." As soon as I said this, the guy perked up. "Oh, James, come on in. Thank you for taking the time to help me out with this." I thought maybe this guy wasn't too social, and he put on a face for uninvited visitors. And when he realized who I was, he changed his tune. I walked into the house, and let me say that the inside of this house matched the outside. The house had clearly been neglected. The walls were tinged with that nicotine yellow, and there were cobwebs in the corners. Each room had a fluorescent light in the ceiling, of which only about half worked, and the other half just sat there flickering. I wasn't there to judge, only to paint, so I ignored it and just maintained my customer-friendly smile. Then we got to the room that he was planning on dubbing the living room. The walls were covered in a dirty, half-peeled wallpaper, and the air was stale. There was a chair in the room in one corner, but other than that, nothing else but a lamp. I wasn't expecting wallpaper, and he had mentioned needing to depaper the room, but he said that he would help me to remove the paper and make it easier, and then apologized when he realized he hadn't mentioned the wallpaper. He had some tools and some wallpaper remover to get it off the walls, so I wasn't overly concerned. We started on one corner together, but after about 10 minutes, he mentioned that his back was hurting, and asked if I would be okay if he sat in the chair for a couple of moments. I would prefer that he hadn't, but at the same time, this was his house, and he was paying me to do the work, so I wasn't really in a position to argue. He sat down and just started watching me take the paper off, and while I assumed that he would get back up to help, he just sat there, watching me with a big smile on his face. As the night went on, the room started getting a lot darker, and by the time it was hitting the evening, I was about 3/4 done with removing the wallpaper. I started stripping off the last wall, and I noticed something on the wall underneath it. I was a little bit confused, but intrigued, so I stripped the paper off, only to see what looked like a pentagram burned into the wall underneath the paper. I took a step back and said, "What the hell?" When I said this, the man jumped up from the chair and stood right behind me, damn near breathing in my ear. "You can see it? You can see that symbol on the wall?" He asked this as if it was a serious question. Of course I could see it. It was burned into the drywall. I turned slightly, which is when I realized how close this guy was to my face, which made me jump even more. "Yeah, I can see it. What is it?" I stammered out my stupid question. I don't know why I prodded for more information. I didn't want to know what it was, but I guess I was curious. My curiosity was rewarded with this man giving me this really terrifying Willem Dafoe Green Goblin grin. "It's for the ritual." He held that smile and then grabbed my arm tightly. "I need your help for the ritual." I yanked my arm free and shouted, "Help you with the what now?" He started laughing, and I saw him reaching into his pocket for, I'm assuming, a knife or something. I shoved him as hard as I could, and I told him that I was done with this nonsense, and started to walk out of the room. He then started shouting about how I had to stay, and how he had sent me the PayPal, and that I had to finish the job. I told him he could shove his job and do a chargeback on the payment, and I took off out of that house, kicking myself for leaving my painting equipment, but it was a small price to pay for whatever the hell this was. I jumped in my car and I started to back out, and I saw this man starting to run out of his house at me. And he seriously chased me out of his driveway and partially down the road. He was sprinting as fast as he could, keeping that creepy smile on his face the whole time. Thankfully, this middle-aged creep was no match for a pickup truck, and I did lose him eventually. I don't know what all that was. I don't know if this was some kind of satanic insanity that he was trying to get me to be a part of or whatever, but the money he'd pay me was nothing in comparison to how terrified I was. Funnily enough, he never did a chargeback, or ask for a refund or whatever you have to do. So, I kept the money that he sent. I did lose a day, and I had worked my back end off stripping that wallpaper, only for this guy to turn into an absolute lunatic, but I guess I got paid for it? So usually, when I buy something off of Craigslist, I make sure to go with someone just to be sure nothing bad happens. This time around, however, all of my friends were busy, and I had already set up a time, and I really wanted what I was buying. I'd been looking for a specific computer that came out in the late 90s. I used to have one as a kid, and it played DOS games better than anything I had afterwards, and it had the best built-in speakers. This outlet was claiming to have one. They posted a bunch of old stuff that they apparently had in stock. All of it retro and old-fashioned tech. Some car parts, anything you could think of they were claiming to have. I sent the guy a text and set up a meeting time for 4 p.m. In hindsight, I should have just kept looking on like eBay or something more safe. But the price was just too good. I hopped in my car and headed to the address the guy gave me. I arrived at 4:01, cash in hand, ready to finally make this purchase. What I didn't notice until I got out of the car was the smell. This place smelled like old garbage and rusty metal. In fact, I didn't really look at the place at all until I got out. It was filthy. It looked to be a whole acre of land just covered in trash and old tech/car parts. The smell was putrid. I should have backed out. I almost did. But as soon as I was even thinking of getting back in the car and getting the hell out of there, this lanky man came hobbling out of this small building in the center of the lot.
Howdy. Welcome to Jimbo's warehouse. We got all kinds of stuff. I'm sure you'll leave happier than when you arrived.
God, I hope so, I thought. I decided to full send it. Hey, I texted you earlier about the DOS PC. Is this the right place?
Sure is. I got 2 of them. You can take a look and pick which one is better for your budget or whatever, and follow me.
I slowly started walking into the muddy, garbage-filled garage lot. The smell was so strong, so putrid. I had to cover my mouth and nose while walking through, hoping this guy didn't turn around and see me. We start going around the side of the small building instead of in.
It's just around back here,
he said. I should have just turned around when he wasn't looking and just ran back to my car. I think I was convincing myself that maybe the place was dirty, but if he actually had the product and it worked, who cared? We finally reached the back of the building, and it was odd. The dirt and the grime was gone, even the smell. There was a clean blacktop with tables and tents lined around the corner edge, looking to be a small outdoor consignment area. I walked to the PC-looking area, and the dirty, lanky man pointed out 2 big, clunky computers. There it was, the computer that I had been looking for since my childhood. It was cheaper than it was listed on Craigslist. I handed the guy the money and walked out of there as fast as I could, thanking the man. It went better than I thought. I didn't really get a chance to use it. I did plug it in to make sure that it worked, and then I packed it up along with the rest of my boxes and stuff. I was planning on moving within the next few days. A couple weeks after I moved out, I got a call from the guy that I sold the house to. He said that a few big men in masks broke in the first night he was there and ripped the place apart. He said that he hid in the bathroom until he left. They took all of his electronics. His TV, computer, game consoles, anything that was considered tech, I guess. My theory was the guy sold pristine tech to people after putting in some kind of tracker, and then when they went home and used it, he and a few people would break in, steal the stuff from their home, and bring it back to that landfill of an outlet to do it all over again. I feel sorry for the guy that moved in after me, but I am also very glad that I moved. That could have been me. I got scared that they tracked me somehow when I turned on the computer to see if it worked, so I just tossed it in a dumpster after I got off the phone. Thankfully, I hadn't even plugged it in since I'd moved. I would have sold it, but I didn't want another person having the same problem as the man I sold the house to. I would rather be out the money and the PC than put someone else through that. It's safe to say, I won't be buying anything off Craigslist for a while. Or ever again. I have always been a bargain hunter, always looking for neat things to add to my collections. I'm the kind of person that loves finding hidden treasures in thrift stores, online marketplaces, etc. Craigslist has absolutely been a godsend. That and Facebook Marketplace. I've gotten so much stuff from those sites: vintage furniture, concert tickets, instruments. Of course, not all of my encounters have been great. Some were pretty clearly people trying to scam me, but there's one that made me question whether or not my love for online deals was really worth my time. It all started with a vintage camera. I'm a photography enthusiast, and I love older analog cameras. I was instantly drawn to this listing. A beautiful camera from the 1960s that was in damn near perfect condition, being sold for a price that was almost too good to be true. I kept looking through the post, and the guy that posted it had put a ton of detail into the description. He had pictures with information listed, had some scans of photos taken with the camera. The overall feel of the listing was by someone that was passionate about the camera's history and information about it, which made me really feel like this was a real post. Excited, I messaged the seller asking if the camera was still available. They replied almost instantly, and their response was enthusiastic and friendly. "Yeah, it's still here in need of a new home. Are you interested in seeing it? I'm available this evening if you want to come by and check it out." There was something about the quick response, the eagerness to meet up for it so quickly, that did make me pause for a second. But at the same time, maybe this guy just wanted to get this thing into the hands of someone that would appreciate it. I'm a pretty decently sized dude, so I'm not typically scared when meeting up with other people. After a little bit of back and forth, I agreed that I would meet them at their apartment. It was a small apartment building, according to Google Maps, but it was a multi-floor building, which made me feel a bit better about it. He gave me the address and some basic directions, and I made my way there later in the afternoon, eager to get my hands on that camera. The apartment building definitely looked a bit older and worn down than it did on Google Maps. Like, a lot more run down. The front door made this awful creaking noise, and the hallways were seriously dark. Like half of the lights didn't work. That, and there was a smell of must and old wood. I slowly made my way to the door, which was actually down the stairs to the lower level, and knocked. My heart was pounding. The thrill of a good deal was fighting that growing sense of dread in my head. Then, the door creaked open. The man was standing in the doorway with his face in a slight smile. He was wearing an old pair of basketball shorts, and nothing else. I was a bit taken aback with this guy coming to the door mostly naked, but at the same time, this was his home, so maybe he just wanted to be comfortable? I personally would have at least put a shirt on, but that's just me. He told me to come on in, and he ushered me into the apartment. I very slowly stepped towards the door, thinking that the second I stepped across the threshold, I was going to be grabbed or attacked or something, but thankfully that didn't happen. The apartment was an absolute disaster. Cluttered and filled with stacks of old newspapers, and various items that looked like they were part of a collection. I stepped in as far as 3 steps past the door, and stopped. The man noticed, but kept walking over to the corner, opened a cabinet, and pulled out a box that was in near pristine condition. A complete contrast to the rest of this place. I grabbed it, and I know for a fact my eyes lit up, because the guy chuckled as he turned to walk away and sit down in his chair. I opened the box, and I pulled out the camera to give it a once-over, and it was just as quality as what he'd listed. As I was looking it over, he was asking me random questions. "Do you live around here? Are you a professional photographer? Do you do a lot of deals on Craigslist?" I'm giving him short and vague answers, my instincts telling me to keep my guard up. I nodded as I finished looking the camera over and placed it back in the box, and then I looked up at the man. and thought I was going to be sick. I'd seen him walk over to the chair and sit down. What I didn't see was him pull a blanket over his lap, and now he was sitting there with his eyes closed and making a motion under the blanket. I stood there for probably 4 or 5 seconds not speaking, just living through the most awkward moments of my life. I think he realized I wasn't saying anything because he opened his eyes and noticed that I was just standing there. I kid you not, this guy immediately cleared his throat and shouted, "I wasn't masturbating." I swear, I stood there just blinking confused for several minutes before I pulled the cash out of my pocket, placed it on one of the stacks of newspapers, and just turned to walk out of the apartment. As I exited, the guy shouted, "Thanks, pleasure doing business with you." I'm pretty damn sure I sprinted out of that building, jumped into my car, and went double the speed limit out of the parking lot. I was happy to have the camera, but that was just gross. So very gross. He messaged me the next day, saying that he was sorry I had to see that. I obviously went ahead and blocked him. Even if he really was sorry, I didn't want to talk to him anymore after that. So, in the end of it all, I did get the really neat retro camera, but I had to deal with this dude giving some self-care in the process. That absolutely was not the last deal that I did on Craigslist, but it was the last time I ever went to get the item at someone's house alone. After that, I always brought a friend, or my brother. I'm glad the dude didn't do anything more, like move the blanket or try to attack me, but it was still super creepy. So, dude that sold me the camera, let's never meet again. I don't usually go on places like Craigslist, but at the time of this story, I was really desperate. My car had been stolen about a month prior, and they found it 2 states away, completely trashed at the bottom of a lake somewhere in Utah. So, needless to say, I didn't have many options to find a replacement. I couldn't hitch a ride with a friend to work forever. I also hated asking for favors. I always felt like I had to return the gesture immediately, so I usually stuck to doing everything for myself. I opened up Craigslist on my phone and I started looking for a used car. There were a bunch outside of my price range. A bunch that were in my budget but looked like absolute garbage. And then there was this 1995 Pontiac Bonneville. It was a nice dark green, looked well kept, and only had 80,000 miles on it. The guy was only asking $2,000 for it, which was under my budget, and I could use the rest to fix up any problems if it had any that the guy didn't list. So I called the number listed on the posting, and after a few rings, a man with a deep and rough voice picked up. "Yeah. Hi. I was wondering if the Pontiac was still for sale." "Yeah, you want it?" "Yep. I can come by today for free." Sounds good." He told me the address to meet him at, and it wasn't that far from me, so I decided to just bike there and toss the bike in the car after I secured it. With $2,000 in cash in my wallet and excitement pumping in my chest, I headed out. After about 5 minutes later, I reached my destination. It was a small shack of a house, with a canopy on the side of it that had a car under it. The car was under a tarp. I assumed that this was the Pontiac that I saw on Craigslist, so I stopped and got off my bike. I decided to call the guy, because there was no way I was going up to this creepy-ass shack alone. The phone rings and rings. No answer. I call again. same thing. So I texted him, but nothing. Instead of listening to my gut that something was wrong and hightailing it out of there, I convinced myself that getting this car today was more important than my possible safety being compromised. I leave my bike on the side of the road, ready to hop on if anything goes awry. I walk up to the lifeless husk of a house and rap on the front door a few times, the frame making a rickety, tinny sound as it bounced against the wood. After a minute or two, a large bearded man that had to be in his 50s or 60s appeared from inside and looked me up and down. "Yeah? What the hell you want?" "Hey, I'm the guy who called earlier about the Pontiac. I tried calling and texting when I got here, but you didn't answer." The guy just looked at me, staring daggers into my soul. He seemed like he either had no idea what I was talking about, or the anger he felt after me knocking on his door outweighed the rules of the transaction. After about a minute, he just went, "One sec, be right out." I backed up from the porch just in case he decided to blow my head off or something. After another minute, the man, now fully dressed, he was in a tank top and his underwear before, walked out the front door looking me up and down again. "Come here." He motioned to me with his hand. I followed him over to the tarp-covered vehicle under the dingy canopy. It smelled musty and old. Probably the entire property and hopefully not the car, right? I'd have to pay to get that smell out. He ripped the tarp off, and what I saw made my jaw drop involuntarily. It was indeed the car from the listing. Only, it looked like it sat in that spot where we were standing for the entire 25 years since it was made. I clenched my mouth shut again before he could see my reaction. "Well," he said with his eyebrow raised, "purty, ain't she?" "Yeah, man, she is beautiful," I managed to say back in utter confusion. Just one sec. I gotta check my bank, make sure I have enough money," I said. I went and checked the listing to see the pictures one more time, and something I neglected to notice in my desperation was a timestamp on the bottom right of each picture. October 11th, 1995. These were scans of printed photographs. I looked back at the guy and he was staring right at me. That same horrible glare right into my soul. I could not buy this car, and I had to get out of this transaction somehow. "Hey, man, I think I left my wallet back at home. I just need to go get it real quick. I'll be right back," I quickly said. Before he could say anything, I trotted to my bike, hopped on, and I sped out of there as fast as I could. I never looked back, nor went back to that creepy house. A week went by and I did end up finding a car within budget. It had about 150,000 miles on it, but it got me from point A to point B. The creepiest part of this whole interaction wasn't that the guy was trying to sell me a 25-year-old car that looked like it had sat outside during a nuclear explosion, but that somehow a day or two after I left, he ended up finding where I lived. He showed up, and he started pounding on my door, yelling slurs and obscenities at me, demanding that I pay him for his wasted time. He came back once or twice over the next few days, and one of my neighbors called the cops, and I never heard from him again after that. So, take this as a lesson. If you don't have a car and need one, don't go on Craigslist. The risk of it being a random weirdo or even some kind of serial killer far outweighs the actual real sales on the site. So that, my friends, was a collection of some terrifying Craigslist stories. Definitely scary stuff going on over on Craigslist. I think I've mentioned it before on previous videos. This is the third one, so maybe I have. I I don't do a lot of business on Craigslist. I've done a few orders or a few transactions on Craigslist, but mostly I've done things on, there was an app I can't remember the name of anymore. It was nice. And then I did a transaction on Facebook Marketplace for an electronic drum set that I still have. That's behind me. It's actually pretty good. I'm awful at playing the drums, though, so it really doesn't matter. I tried. I'm trying, not really trying actively anymore, but it's fun. And whenever I get the feeling of, just wanting to mess around with the drum set, I can just pull it over and turn it on, plug in my headphones, and play an electronic drum set. It's a full set, too. So, it's like a $500 set, and I got it for like $150. Dude just didn't want it anymore. I think it was just sitting in his basement, so... Anyway. So I don't have any creepy anecdotes, but I do have a drum set, so there's that. Yeah. Really some good stories here today, and hopefully you all did enjoy them. I know that I did, as always, of course. If I didn't enjoy them, I wouldn't read them, right? Alternatively, if you didn't enjoy them, you wouldn't listen, right? So, there's that. Yeah. If you did enjoy them and would like to show me you enjoyed them, please hit that thumbs up button. That does help tremendously. You can also subscribe if you're new to the channel and liked what you heard and want more stuff like this. We're very close to the end of this month, which means we're very close to the end of the daily content. So, yeah. Fret not. September will be probably a normal month, where I do my normal 3 videos a week. Probably more. I think my schedule actually has more than 3, but it's not the 6 that I have been doing. And then, October, we're going to do this all again. A video a day. That's the intentions. Last year I said that and got COVID and couldn't do jack crap. Hopefully it doesn't happen again. I really hope it doesn't happen again. Please do not happen again. Please. I can't do that again. Anyways, leave me a comment down below if you like the stories, what you liked about them, which one was your favorite, which one was your least favorite, all that stuff. If you've ever done a transaction on Craigslist that went bad, I'd like to know, I suppose. And you can also join Patreon memberships for early access, do a super thanks, which is a tip to the channel, never expected, always appreciated. And that's everything. Trying to wrap this up, I went way too long. I hope you all remember you are loved, you are valid, you are important, you're the best you that you can be. Do not forget it, and do not let anyone tell you otherwise. And until I see you again, my lovely friend, much love, and sleep well.